So Gregory, do you want to say
Sure,
Let
sure,
me introduce Gregory. He sent me a bio, which I loved. He said, I was born in Oakland, California in 1970.
1970.
My father, Greg Sr., was one of the first members of the Oakland branch of the Black Panther Party. My mother, Pam Perkins, joined the Panthers in the summer of 1969. She was 17 and several months pregnant when she joined the organization. Over the first 9 years of life, the Panthers were my family. I was among the first students at the Panther Charter School, the Oakland Community Learning Center, or the Oakland Community School. As I explained to you, the Learning Center was what we called it in the evenings and the weekends, so that we had teen program, seniors program, adult literacy, all kinds of things, and then the school by day, Monday through Friday. We were placed in kindergarten at the age of 3 and in classrooms in accordance with our academic ability, not just according to age.
Right.
Which was really powerfully important if you think about it. Oakland Community Schools' supportive environment provided an excellent foundation, a foundation I likely would not have been provided with had I attended public school in East Oakland. After leaving the Black Panther Party, my mother enrolled me in public school in North Oakland, and I eventually graduated from Tennyson High School in Hayward at the age of 16. That's early graduation.
Yeah.
Did you continue to ask a zillion questions?
Yes.
Oh my God, he asked so many questions. And it was wonderful, that's what we said. The only silly question is the one you don't ask. It's your world, show up in it. After high school, I graduated from San Francisco State University with a bachelor's degree in Black Studies, minor in Cinema Studies. I also wrestled, and I didn't know that until I read this. You wrestled? And played football at San Francisco State. In 2001, I graduated from the New College of California School of Law and received my Juris Doctor degree. I'm presently a managing partner with WGS Law Corporation, a personal injury law firm in Oakland. Please welcome Gregory Lupus.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I don't know how much do you guys know about the Panthers and the Oakland Community School? Have you guys, outside of what's been talked about here?
One group did their midterm on the Oakland Community School. Which group was that? Just one of you here?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, just continuing on the foundation of what was shown on the PowerPoint and some of the ideas that Ericka has put forward, she actually just reminded me of something that I had forgotten about. At the Oakland Community School, I was, there's a documentary that pretty much explains I was one of the most talkative kids in the class, because I was inquisitive, because I had questions, and because I felt empowered to ask questions. That dynamic created this kind of open mind and open spirit that I carry with me through today. And as Ericka said that, I realized that when I actually went to public school, especially when we moved to Hayward, that was silenced.
Yes.
It was silenced. My natural curiosity, my penchant for challenging authority, and really, trying to get behind the sort of basic answers and really get some deep thought was not received well in public school in Hayward. At that time, I was also one of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 African American students.
In the school or in your classroom?
In my school, like my generation, the generation below me, there were more black folks that came in. But in the early 80s, I was one of few. So I mean, that piece of empowerment really shined through from the day that we woke up. I mean, our days, I still remember them very vividly. We were waking up. We all lived in dorm settings. It was me, Erica's daughter Mai, Ericka Brown, who's Elaine Brown's daughter, and Khalida Smith, and I don't know if you guys know Digital Underground, but Money B, the rapper from Digital Underground, was also my running buddy, if you will. And our mornings were basically started 6 o'clock. I'm not a morning person by any means. lights on, get up, get out of bed, you know. And so we woke up, grumbled. It was 6 of us to a room, and that's how our day started. You know, we all took turns. It was this routine, and this basic routine. This dynamic actually has stayed with me my whole life. Of you know, this routine from washing our face to brushing our teeth. You know, we talk and jibber jabber along the way, and then get ready, and then file down to a bus that would take us to the school. You know, and every moment, although it was regimented, it was fun. We chattered. I know we were, you know, we're all college students, so I know we were as annoying as hell at times, but we just, you know, that energy, that burst of energy that kids have, to see it not shuttered or sheltered in our generation was really a great way to start today. So we got to the school by 6:30, 7 o'clock, exercise. Mm-hmm. That's how we started our day. To this day, I mean, that's where the wrestling and the football and all that, and that's where in our community, we have forgotten how important exercise is, and to keep us healthy and to keep our hearts strong. There's some dynamics with that where I think there's an intentional intent for us to forget about our health. But that was a very big foundation to the start of our day. And anyone, again, I'm not a morning person, I don't do this today, but anyone who starts off that day with exercise, you know, everything's heightened, you know, for at least the rest of the day. So we started off with that. It was all, you know, all of us kids, and then we'd go into breakfast. And breakfast would be, like I said, oatmeal, any number of things, but what the key foundation is that we never, ever went hungry. And, you know, I know students, and I've worked with students who don't have a meal before class, and that's why the test scores go down. That's why the energy level goes down. That's why, or you have a bag of Cheetos and a Coke, you know. So those dynamics really was a foundation that it has impacted me later in life. I didn't appreciate it as much then because it was just how we lived. It was how we were supposed to live. And you know, some of the tragedy is that when we left, there was sort of a hole left in there because we were so used to that. So, so just a little bit about my family dynamic. I'll try to be quick, but the uniqueness of the experience and living in the dorm setting, and I think this is not talked about sometimes, but I think this has had a profound impact on me, was we lived in dorms with boys and girls. Although we slept in different places, we rubbed elbows all day. So just that connection, female and male, and being able to really know how to talk to each other, know how to respect each other at a young age. I realized later on in life really impacted me, and most of the adults who watched us, like Ericka, and like she said, you know, Ericka's a very sweet, wonderful woman. Back then, she didn't play. You did not cross, you know, certain adults, and it was mostly really strong women who really kind of had us in check, if you will, and in place, you know, in a very much needed way. So, as I said, my mom she was 17 years old, and my father, my biological father, he did start in the Panthers, and he brought us to the Panthers, but he left soon after I was born. He was a professional musician. He played with Confunction and some other bands, and he also had a very bad drug habit. So he was essentially out of my life till I met him again when I was 9. And the irony of that experience is he came back with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed wife from Canada that had my last name, but my mother didn't even have my last name. So it's a very, you know, it's a very full circle experience through that. But my stepdad, who Ericka knows as well, Glenn Lomax, from the time I was 5, he basically raised me, took me on fishing trips, taught me how to throw a baseball, you know, taught me how to not cry when I fall, you know, taught me how to be a man. And Glenn was one of, you know, many men within the organization who actually gave us this really foundation and responsibility of how to be young men eventually, and how to also respect ourselves and respect the people around us. So as I said, we had the basic rules and routines at the school. Breakfast was planned, and one of the things I thought about when I was doing this presentation is of how this has related to how my family dynamic is now. I have 3 children. I'm divorced now, but I was married for a long time. And you know, my son is now 19. He's a freshman at Arizona State University, and my daughter is we're deciding between DePaul and University of Colorado, but the same dynamic that I had, that I grew up with, I realized I was doing it with my kids. We had routines of breakfast, we had lunch, we had dinner. Dinner was an important time to talk. Let's connect and talk about your day. So a lot of that dynamic exercise, running, my kids, they're not allowed to not be at least physically fit and mentally fit. So that part of the dynamic went through, and another part that I would briefly mention too is being aware of politics, being aware of what's going on not only in your community, but what was going on internationally. We were thinking about this at 7, 8 years old. I mean, it was a very dynamic time in the Bay Area, from Jim Jones to, I don't know if you guys know about the Church of Jim Jones and Patty Hearst, and just really all this really intense political energy that was going around in the Bay. And some of it's picking up now with different movements, but that was the fuel for how we understood the world and understood why we were here. It was just understanding of politics and political issues at a very young age, and really seeing how they impacted our parents. I mean, there were times when my stepdad wasn't coming home because he got arrested for selling newspapers. The Panthers were routinely picked up off the street, and instead of us having this negative idea of daddy's in jail, he's fighting for a cause, and there's a reason. And there's a reason why kind of we're all here and how this impacts us. So just from a young age, politics is always, I'm the only one on the BART train who reads the newspaper now. Everybody's got their smartphones and their and their everything, and I just hear one thing rattling, and it's me reading the front page. So I think that important dynamic should be imparted on us all, really, is to really understand politics locally, issues locally that impact us, whatever issues that you find important, to really make them a part of your life, part of your daily life, because that's how we're functioning in society. So finally, and then I mentioned exercise. I really think exercise and nutrition was really such a good foundation for me that it's something that we need to continue to remind our kids, to remind ourselves in our community. It's, I love fried food like anybody else. I love me some fried chicken. I love me some fried fish. I have New Orleans roots, and that's within reason. But we got to balance that. We have to, I have to exercise, especially at my 40+ years. The last thing I wanted to talk about is just the idea of charter schools and how, what can be done today, because I think there are some solutions that we had, that we shared, that our parents and the adults who guided us, they had this unique experience deep in East Oakland. I mean, I wonder if that can be done now. I believe it can, but how? How do we create another environment with these dynamic, young, committed teachers, committed folk, really, who gave of themselves to the community? That's the dynamic that was happening, and that's why I mentioned those times as being dynamic, really dynamic. And then we have some examples of that. My youngest daughter goes to Oakland School of the Arts, and she's in the visual arts program, and they have performances, and they have all this stuff that really reminds me of what we did at our school. She didn't get that in public before she was in public school, in elementary school. Arts programs are cut. There's no encouragement of freedom of expression that we had. For me personally, once I got to public school, I went from being first chair trumpet to getting kicked out into the woodshop class, literally. I had a teacher who said, "You shouldn't be in band." And meanwhile, I was a great trumpet player at the Oakland Community School, and continued even in Oakland until I got to Hayward, and then I was ostracized to woodshop. So, part of that creative expression that it actually shut that part of me down. And I didn't learn how to play guitar until years later, until I was 25. But, the creativity and the freedom of expression is so vital, and I know a lot of you who go to regular public schools, that's been lacking. So I think there are some solutions. Oakland School of the Arts is an example of the potential that can be done. I think that we also need to embrace paying and supporting our teachers and creating an environment to really encourage folks like y'all to teach. You know, I personally would love to teach, but raising a family and everything, it's easier for me to go for, admittedly, to go for a lawyer's salary than it is for a teacher's salary. You know, and one thing I was thinking of coming over here and thinking about public servants, you know, why do Oakland police officers, why do they get overtime and teachers don't? There needs to be kind of a reshift in the importance of education. And I think we were at the Panthers were really at the forefront of this movement that unfortunately in many ways got cut short, and we're left with trying to kind of pick up the pieces. And here we are today. So thank you guys for your time.
So I just want to briefly introduce her. She's an Oakland native. Her parents were in the Black Panther Party from 1968 to 1978. Her primary education was at the Samuel Napier Youth Institute, which later was named the Intercommunal Youth Institute, which was later named the Oakland Community School. And then she attended Bret Hart Junior High, Frick, James Madison, and Elmhurst Junior High before transferring and graduating 13th of 406 students from Castlemont High in 1983. She later earned an undergraduate degree in geology and 2 graduate degrees in geophysics and geography before she was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I'm so glad that you mentioned this, because sometimes we are shamed into conforming to something that isn't us. So thank you. Can I call you Teresa?
No, please.
It's hard for me to call you Dr. Williams.
Oh, no, just
But
Teresa's fine. Everybody
Dr.
calls me
Teresa.
that. No, Teresa. Everybody, my students, some of my former students are in here. They know to call me Teresa.
You're a beloved professor here at Merritt. Absolutely. She's worked as a geophysicist in the United States Geological Survey, neighborhood services coordinator for the Oakland Police Department, educational consultant for the Oakland Unified School District, and board member of the Chabot Space and Science Center. Do any of you know Chabot Space and Science? She has more than 17 years teaching experience at the public high school, community college, state university, and private university levels. In particular, she's worked as an instructor of earth sciences for Merritt College and College of Alameda, California State University East Bay, and the University of Phoenix. In addition, she has 22 years experience in public speaking and workshop development in the areas of educational and personal growth, and 14 years experience as an educational trainer and consultant. So, and also she's presented her research at national and international conferences. So, as you welcomed Gregory, please welcome Teresa. You want the front light off so the screen is clear?
Sure, yeah. First, let me say that when people read stuff about my life, it doesn't even sound like it's me. Okay, and when I talk about my life, it's really emotional. It's an emotional roller coaster. So I guess the best way to start is just to show you a YouTube video of me when I was like 6 years old. Okay. And let me.
For freedom. We say that even after children to be like George Jackson, to live like George Jackson, and to fight for freedom as George Jackson fought for freedom. We say that even after death, George Jackson still is alive because his ideas, his spirit will be manifested in the physical. Again, we see our young Panthers here who growing up, and they will grow up trying to live by the standard that George Jackson set. By this, George left a legacy, and he will go on.
Of course we need babies to help fight the protracted wars. Some of the Conrads have different opinions on this question, the principles, which would be, why should we allow this to happen to anyone else? But I support war on the family plan.
That's my sister
The
Deborah.
Vietnamese have 6-year-old mind plans. I think if I had been on the street from age 18 to 24, I would probably be a dope fiend or a
That's my
small
sister
stakes gambler or humping the ground.
That's
Jessica.
That was Jessica, yes.
Jessica was Huey Newton's stepdaughter. His daughter. I don't like that term step, but I'm trying to get it. He didn't have biological children. That we know of.
That was my beginning. And just like he said, we were up before the sun rose. And we were marching. And we were going through the neighborhood and we were chanting. And something that's not discussed here was what we would chant. In 1968 or so, we stayed at Children's House. And at Children's House, we would get up in the morning, we would shout, "I am somebody," okay? We'd stand at attention and we would shout, "I am somebody," over and over and over again, till our voices were hoarse. And then they'd make us shout some more. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand the impact that would have on my life. Now, whenever I go through difficulty, you know, at the point where I'm just breaking down, about ready to cry, I go to the mirror and I start chanting again, "I am somebody, I am somebody." And that's able to get me through, okay? So that's the beginning of who I am and why I am the person that I am today, okay? If you go online, I actually have my educational journey. I'm writing a memoir on my educational journey. This is me here. I've got 6 sisters. That's Deborah. She died of she was murdered in East Oakland. Left for dead in the street gutter. And I had to raise her 2 children. There's my sister Donna. She got pregnant at 13. That's my sister Louise. She lives right now in Washington. She's a nurse. This is my sister Luana. She was adopted by Jane Fonda. And that right there is my brother Randy. He lives in East Oakland. And we get together, we chat all the time. Again, if you go here, you'll actually see, again, Teacher's Pledge. I'm in education because of my experience at the Oakland Community School. And I'm not an ordinary teacher. The students will tell you I never give them an answer. Okay, what I will tell them is, I'd ask them, what do you think? You know, 9 times out of 10, they have the answer. They just want me to validate that they have the answer. And my students who are sitting in this room, they know I don't validate. I really don't validate. So some of them get upset until after the class, and then we're best friends and give me a hug all the time.
That sounds familiar.
That's Oakland Community School. They never validated us. Oakland Community School, we worked in groups. We went from table to table to table to get our own answers because the teacher was just a resource. And my students who took me before, do I do that? That's Oakland Community School. That's how I was taught, and it's very effective. Every morning we would get up and we would actually read a pledge. And I changed the words. It used to be Black People's Pledge, but I've changed it to teachers. And this is what I live by. And again, this is all Black Panther Party here. And it says, "I pledge to develop my mind and body to the greatest extent possible. I will learn all I can in order to give my best to my students in their struggle to learn. I will keep myself physically fit, building strong body free from drugs and other substances which weaken me and will make me less capable of protecting myself, my family, my students." I am dead serious about that. My students know that that's really me. I will unselfishly share my knowledge and understanding with students in order to bring about change more quickly. I will discipline myself to direct my energies thoughtfully and constructively rather than wasting them in idle hatred. My students know this is me 100%. They evaluate me 4 times a semester. They let me know what I need to do to better effectively teach them. And I tell them all the time, we do what we call transparent grading, and then I walk out the room and I let them evaluate me to protect their anonymity. And I do that because sometimes even I will attack a student unconsciously, okay? It's something that people do, and it's on a subconscious level. So to protect that, that's also part of me right here. The last thing that I want to really stress here is that I will train myself never to hurt or allow others to harm students, for I recognize that we need every student to be physically and psychologically strong. The last 2 sentences, all principles I pledge to practice daily and to teach them to others in order to unite and educate all. We would say this chant, we would say this pledge, like people would stand up and do, "I pledge allegiance to the flag." I don't know if they still do that. Do they still do that? Back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, they would have to do that. But I pledge allegiance to my people. And as a teacher, I pledge allegiance to students, okay, every single day. Again, that came from the Black Panther Party. And it reminds me to behave and to treat my students in a respectful manner. I have so many photographs of before, during, and after I was in the Black Panther Party in Oakland Community School. And here are some actual pictures of my former teachers and the impact that they actually had on me. I was a difficult student. Okay, I stayed in Ericka's office. I know she never said it, but I stayed in her office, okay? That's my graduation photo from when I graduated. What effect has the Oakland Community School had on my life? And what lessons have I learned from it? These are actually some of the lessons that I remembered when I was sitting in a seat. And I'll wait for Ericka to pass them out, and then I'll talk about them. And I'd encourage you guys, I really encourage you guys to actually go and get copies of these two books. Now, I don't know if you remember this, Gregory, because I was ahead of you.
Yeah.
And the most powerful thing I have ever read, and I keep a copy of it with me at all times, is that book about Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I have it's right here. Okay? It is like 100 pages long, most of which are just pictures. We read this in a classroom, and I was in the 6th grade. And there were a lot of words we didn't understand. So I guess in public school, the teacher would tell you. They gave us a dictionary, look it up. Okay? We didn't get validated. Okay? And let me go through and just share with you what I thought was the most powerful parts of this book. And again, it carried with me. I carried with me throughout my whole life. And basically the lesson, I learned to believe in myself. Because guess what? Nobody else is going to do it. People say they can do it, but you know what? That won't have an impact on you. Obstacles are going to be placed in my path, especially, this book is all about learning, especially when it comes to me wanting to learn. Okay? And when those obstacles are put in my path, I have to become Jonathan to overcome them. Family and friends, they'll be the primary obstacles. Are you guys with me on that? Feel free to say amen. Okay? And what's interesting about family and friends is you've got to recognize that. When I read this book, I recognized, oh, I need to watch out for family and friends, especially when it comes to my educational success. And I would just listen, and when the obstacles were there, I was like, I understand. I create my own reality, okay? All of it, good, bad, or ugly. My sister was adopted by Jane Fonda. She created that.
Oh,
Okay.
I've seen that on TV.
Yeah, you saw it on TV.
Sure.
I created mine. Yes, she is.
That's Haggerty.
And guess what? I created mine because I wanted to be with you. I accept that. Huh?
What happened that made
Let her finish and you can ask her questions, okay? We want to stay with Teresa's story right now.
Your thoughts. She wanted money and power. She focused on that. Opportunities opened up and made it happen. I wanted to encourage and empower people. Opportunities opened up and allowed me to do it. So the good, the bad, the ugly, I own all of that. I got that from this book. I wanted to be a teacher who teaches students self-awareness. That's in this book. When I look back and I read Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I see my whole entire life. And at the very end, Jonathan the Seagull became a teacher. Okay? And he taught students self-awareness. I have to own that everything that's happened to me up to this point, I made it. Okay? That's what I got from this book. And as a teacher, when I teach students, I teach them spiritual, emotional, and intellectual lessons wrapped in a veneer of geology, wrapped in a veneer of earth science. So you'll get an earth science topic, but really, I'm really talking about this. Okay? The second book, you remember that book?
Oh, yeah. That was one of the first books I read.
Here are just a couple of paragraphs, excerpts from it. The ones that really resonate in me, and also that I can get emotional when I read these, okay? The first one here says, Jonathan, he had actually gone out when all the other seagulls were out eating. He was out trying to learn how to fly. He was trying to teach himself how to fly. And he went out and he learned how to fly a dive. It was a very dangerous maneuver, but he actually did it, and he was so proud of himself. And so he came back to his flock to say, did you guys see me? I did the most amazing thing. And this was their response to him. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, stand to the center. The elder's words sounded in a voice of the highest ceremony. Stand to the center meant only great shame or great honor. Stand to the center for honor was the way the Gull's foremost leader were marked. Of course, he thought, the breakfast flock this morning, they saw the breakthrough. But I wanted no honors. I have no wish to be a leader. I only want to share what I've found, to show those horizons out ahead for us all. He stepped forward. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, said the elder, stand to center for shame in the sight of your fellow Gulls. A lot of times in education, what I thought I was doing was right. I was dragged to the front of the classroom to be made ashamed of myself. When I picked up the book and read not only the chapter that I was supposed to read in public school, but I read 2 or 3 other chapters, and I brought in questions about those chapters, I was brought to the front to be shamed. It happened so often that, just like he said, I just shut down in the room. Okay? Because I was not a K through 12 student, I didn't go through Oakland Public Schools. I went through Panther School first. I did not learn my place. In Oakland, and public school was trying to teach me my place. Over and over again, I was shamed. Am I the only one in this room that was done to? Okay. Now, Seagull was never supposed to speak back. You're not supposed to speak back to a teacher. I was not taught that. I was taught to speak to a teacher. You know what I was taught? I was equal. You know, they just had a little bit more knowledge. And guess what? The knowledge that they had, they weren't giving it to me. No, I was fighting for that. So, of course, you know, I sort of spoke out. And it says here, a seagull never speaks back to the council flock. But it was Jonathan's voice raised. Irresponsibility, my brothers, he cried. Who is more responsible than a gull who finds and follows a meaning, a higher purpose for life? For thousands of years, we have scrabbled for fish heads. But now we have a reason to live, to learn, to discover, to be free. Give me one chance. Let me show you what I found. You know, they didn't want to hear that. How many times in class, when you have something to share, people don't want to hear it? Am I the only one? Okay. The brotherhood was broken, the gulls intoned together. And with one accord, they solemnly closed their ears and turned their backs upon him. That's how I felt Oakland Unified School District treated me. There were teachers who actually were very good, who did their job. But the ones I remember, the ones who deeply scarred me, they were the ones who turned their back on me. And when they turned their back on me, of course, you know, you go to family and friends, and guess what? They turned their back too. Fall in line. Do what you're told. Do what you're supposed to do. Okay? And Jonathan spent the rest of his days alone. His one sorrow was not solitude. It was that the other gulls refused to believe in the glory of the flight that awaited them. They refused to open their eyes and see. In my classes, this is all what I teach, over and over and over again, okay? And so, you know, there's a few more, but I think you guys get the point. If you want more, you read the book, okay? The second book that we read that I thought was incredibly powerful, Autobiography of Malcolm X. Now, I don't know about Gregory, but the part that was most important to me, the lessons, the thing that I took away from it, I got to teach myself. In 6th grade, before I ever got to public school, it was drilled into me, the whole need to teach yourself. Second thing, I learned to have the courage to direct my own learning. Okay, I was never guided. I was always taught to guide myself. The next thing I learned how to study independent of school grades. I wasn't interested in school grade. I was interested in the knowledge. And that's what I learned from the Oakland Community School. And even now, students come to me and they're like, I need to get that A. I'm like, why? If I just give you the A now, will you work to learn? I mean, what is it? I learned to create and follow my own educational path to success. You got to do that. Don't wait on somebody else to do it, because you know people will screw you over. And then they'll say, oops, my bad, and you'll be out of, you know, whatever, scholarship, whatever, okay? And how does that affect my teaching? Well, I teach students to be independent learners by teaching them how to think and write critically about earth science. Okay, a lot of times in my class, students say, well, what's the answer? There is no answer. In my class, there's no one answer. There's only your answer, okay? I'll just quickly tell you the most important part of that book was the part where Malcolm X learned to read and write in prison. And he did it with a dictionary. And he kept going back to that dictionary and studying and learning how to write. And Oakland Unified School District sent me straight to Malcolm X, and I did my studying in the public library. When my teachers wouldn't teach me, I had the courage to teach myself, and because of Oakland Beauty School, I had the skills to teach myself. So I would show up and take exams, and guess what? Pass the exam, get the highest score, end up with an F in the class.
What?
End up with an F in the class. Hello? Oh yeah. And that was okay, because I wasn't there for the grade. I knew the material. Those are just a few of the lessons. And now what I want to share with you is my educational memoir. I've got 2 excerpts here. Here is the contents. I talk about birth of a Panther Cub. The next thing I talk about is my primary school education in the Black Panther Party, Oakland Community School. Then I talk about public schools. What happened? What was the big difference between these two and the impact it had on my life? Then I talk about my undergraduate education, my graduate education, becoming an educational activist, serendipity, and then lastly I have my conclusion. My conclusion was written for my sister Luana. I talk about why I wear boots, combat boots. When we were marching, we were always in boots. I didn't really understand that, but I think one of the reasons why now I wear my boots is because I'm stomping over societal glass shards that administrative zombies have scattered along the educational opportunity trail. I pulverize the shards into dust with my thick-soled combat boots to ensure that students who follow my path can do so safely. Okay? So if you see me strutting around in my boots and look like in my own private world, I am. I'm thinking about how I can better serve you guys. Okay? I had teachers who were always trying to better serve us. All right? The conclusion to my book was actually written for my sister Luana, because after everything that happened, she didn't help. My sister got murdered, she wasn't there. Raising her children, she wasn't there. And so she popped up in time for an Oprah Winfrey article, in time to tell her story. And I didn't give her the story she really wanted. And as a result of that, I kind of wrote this right here. And I'm gonna read this and then I'll be done. But my life's journey has not been easy, not easy at all. It can be summarized with this statement: shit happens. I had little control over the shit. I had little control over what happened or what is happening to me. The only thing I can control is my response to it. I chose to deal with it because once shit's on you, it affects everything and everyone around you. Well, many people will comment indirectly about your shit. They may say things like, I smell shit, do you? A long time ago, when I was a defenseless child, I had several tons of other people's shit dumped on me. I was wholly buried in the warm, fermenting pile. However, rather than rest at the bottom of the pile and complain, I decided to do something about it because I wanted to breathe fresh air, feel sunlight, and experience a shit-free world. However, I didn't know how to begin that journey when I was young. So for many years, I just sat under it, dreamed and hoped that someone would rescue me. No one came for me, but Jane Fonda came for my sister, Mary Luana. Eventually, the dreams gave way to prayers. I prayed that God would rescue me. Nothing happened. I prayed that society would rescue me. Something happened. The shit pile grew bigger. Eventually, I prayed that I would find my own way out, and an idea came to me from nowhere. The idea was to shake my hand like a cup and dig my way out. That moment, I started digging and continued digging for years. One day, I dug through partially digested corn and sunflower seeds, and I got excited because I knew plants grew in sunlight, and I knew I was close to the surface. That prompted me to dig faster. The faster I dug, the more it made its way into my nose and stung. I sneezed and kept digging. The faster I dug, the more the pasty, smooth, earthly taste of it filled my mouth. I gagged and kept digging. The faster I dug, the more I felt the shitty particles irritate and burn my eyes. I blinked and cried and kept on digging. Through the physical pain of digging, I never once considered stopping because the dream of fresh air, sunlight, and a shit-free world took over me and lived through me. I dug on without tiring, but rested occasionally to view my surroundings. Every time I stopped, all I saw was shit. So I kept digging because, as I said before, a rescue party wasn't coming. What did I eat? I ate shit. Where did I sleep? I slept in shit. What did I breathe? I breathed shit-smelling air. What did I see? I only saw shit. What did I dream? I dreamed of fresh air, sunlight, and a shit-free world. How did I know which direction to dig? I didn't. I just dug. Did I think I would get out of it? Nope. I only focused on the action of digging. The act of digging became my salvation because it was the only thing in my world I had control over. What was my world like when I dug? Peaceful, serene, joyous, and remarkable. I was so engrossed with the digging that I forgot I was trapped in shit and dreaming of something better. Are you guys all with me on this?
Yes.
Okay. Eventually, holding on to my dream allowed me to crawl out of my shit. I say my shit because although none of it came from my body, I still had to deal with it. The moment I chose to deal with it was the moment I ceased being a victim. The moment I chose not to be a victim, the door of opportunity opened and I became a shit miner. As a miner, the universe gave me the tools I needed to dig my way out. When I was young, a pile of shit was dumped on me, and I didn't understand why. Now that I'm older, I see shit for what it is, the waste product of a dysfunctional world. Everyone experiences it, and a person's social position in the pile, bottom, middle, or top, doesn't matter because people are still surrounded by it. It's easy to sit comfortably in a warm pile of past or present shit and complain and blame others for creating it, but it's something altogether different to crawl out of it, stand on top of it, reach into it, and pull others free. I chose a profession that would allow me to help people visualize and create a shit-free world. I'm a teacher who began life under a ton of shit, crawled through it, and is now helping students learn how to crawl out of their own shit. I'm a shit survivor and a shit extractor. In the Oakland Community School, Ericka, you're a poet, and they taught us to write creatively. And it just happens that because I learned to speak creatively and with emotion, I can write like that, okay? And as an undergraduate, when I was kicked out of UC Berkeley for not knowing how to write, and my teacher threw my paper, crumbled it up, threw it at me, told me to get out of his office and never come back again, I believed every word he said. I would never learn how to write. However, Oakland Community School taught me that whatever somebody else does, I can do the same thing. So because he could write, I knew I could write. And I never gave up that dream. Even though I'm dyslexic, I can't see the difference between a B and D. When I have to physically write with a pen and pencil, I'll flip those time and time again. And I had to hide that the entire time I was an undergraduate. The entire time I was a graduate student, no one knew I had a learning disability until I graduated and became an instructor up here, and then I started telling people. So if you've got a learning disability, if you had trouble in school, if you lived in a learning environment where there was violence all over the place, gunshots, I'm ducking gunshots, walking, 4 deep drug dealers on the porch, all of that. Born and raised in Oakland, Sobrani Park, Lockwood, 73rd Avenue, all of those good places, okay? It wasn't until I was 38 that I stopped hearing gunshots because I moved to a new area. But all along, I always heard gunshots. And you get to the point where you're desensitized to it, okay? So I understand what you guys are going through. Keep it up.
So now, if you have questions for Gregory or Teresa, and please keep your questions for them about them and their experience of Oakland Community School. And, Gregory posed a great question, which I don't know if I said this. I don't know if I said this to the both of you, but their final papers are a group project, their midterms were a group project, and their final papers are tied to their midterm. The midterm, each of them chose to write about and present about a community survival program of the Black Panther Party. So their final is about, okay, now you have the research on those survival programs, so what? Now what? And what would you propose for 2014, having understood and researched what you researched about the free ambulance program, the free food giveaways, the free food programs, the clinics, the sickle cell anemia and research, the Oakland Community School, and everything that preceded it? What now? So you can also ask questions about their own hopefulness. That was so amazing. Both of you had me in tears. Was this emotional for anybody else? Because you reminded me today of the Black Panther Party that isn't in books. And I'm sorry that it's not.
not that level. So I'm so glad to hear that you're writing your memoir. And I hope that you will too, because I know you've written and you're in articles. And I'll try to bring this wonderful documentary about the school to class so people can see it. LeVar Burton, remember him? From Reading Rainbow? He had a show called Rebop. And Rebop did features on community organizations and entities. And LeVar came to Oakland Community School and interviewed the students, actually. And Khalida Smith narrated it. She was 8 years old. Maybe she was 9. But I have to bring it in so you can see it. Okay, so now your questions. And we only have a little bit of time left. So, Carolyn?
I have a question for both. One for Mr.
Gregory.
Gregory. You talked about the dorm, like you lived in a dorm setting. So what did that look like as far as like, did most of the kids that were in the program stay in the dorms, or was it just the Black Panther Party members' children that stayed in the dorm? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I think the majority of the kids who stayed in the dorms were children of Black Panther Party members. And then there were also kids whose maybe their parents weren't around, who were also mixed in with us.
That's correct.
So it was a combination. It was a combination of
The students came to us, as they both pointed out, from the heart of East Oakland, but also from Richmond, Hunters Point, South Berkeley, San Leandro, Hayward, and so on. And so quite often in befriending the community we lived in, because we made it was our obligation to do so, we would find out about a homeless family or an abandoned child. And we would take them in as if we were surrogate parents. It's illegal to do that now. We didn't care about it being legal because we were outlaws. So we just wanted them to be loved and fed and clothed and housed until somebody could come and claim them. We always let people know where the child was. And sometimes, like you said, parents couldn't take care of their child for a week or so, and we would keep them. But primarily, they were the sons and daughters of members of the Black Panther Party and sons and daughters of friends of members of the Black Panther Party. Do you have a question?
My question is for Sister Teresa. How did it come about that your sister was adopted by James Panther?
Okay, it really, the honest to God truth is that's what she wanted. She made situations happen so that it became real. My father, my uncle knew Jane Fonda because Jane Fonda was active. She was always supporting causes for minority people. And she had a ranch in Santa Barbara. So she invited all of us to come down and stay in the ranch because we were really, really poor.
You're talking about your family.
My family, yeah, we were very, very poor. I mean, yeah, we were really bottom poor. So my uncle told us to go. When we were to go, he said, if you meet Jane Fonda, tell her about your living situation. So when I went, she wasn't there. Then when Lawana went, the first year we both went, she wasn't there. The next year, my uncle came to me and said, you should go this time. She's going to be there. And I said, I don't want to go. And he was very upset. And he was like, this is your opportunity to do something great for yourself. And I don't want to go. And my sister Lawana said, I want to go. And so Lawana went and she met Jane Fonda. And she told Jane Fonda about how poor we were. And so Jane Fonda sort of would take Lawana every year. Lawana would go and stay with her and her family. And then eventually she adopted her. Okay? And that's how Lawana met Jane Fonda. Wasn't interested in that lifestyle. So I chose to stay with my mother, live in the heart of East Oakland, and fight for everything.
Also, the thing about the Panthers too, and having these so-called celebrities around us, we weren't really stunned or amazed by having these celebrities around. I mean, I've gone back and looked.
Starstruck.
We weren't starstruck. So I've gone back and looked at, or I'll see, somebody like Marlon Brando or even James Baldwin. And I realized, wait, I met them when I was a child. Tina Turner. I met these people. They were just.
Tina.
People.
So I think that was also a part of it. I mean, our family was our community. When we committed to where we were, that we didn't want to be anywhere. I didn't want to be anywhere else, you know. So that's that. I can see how that was a choice that your sister made versus the choices that we made.
He had his hand up next, and then you, Alan. Go ahead.
It's more like a statement or something because
Or
I
something.
thank you guys. Yeah, well, I thank both of you guys for coming and what you're saying. But I have the thing that rubbed me the wrong way is when you said stepchild.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I went to the school on East 14th very briefly. And what I learned from not my biological father, but my father, is that steps are what you walk on. And that's a negative insight to put on a child. So when people say steps, that puts something negative out there and it doesn't give a positive reinforcement to a child when they're growing up because that means I'm disconnected to you.
Right.
So I always tell people steps are what you walk on. And, you know, be more, you know, personal of what you're saying and careful. Think outside the box. Cause, you know, I've learned that from not my biological, but my father that was there for me.
Right.
Him and my mother introduced me to the Panthers years ago. And that one thing I remember about him clearly because of that made me tell all the kids that even women I meet today,
Right.
we're together, you're my children, you're not, steps are what you want. Call me anything else
Right.
but stepdad.
Right. No, you're right. And actually the reality of what happened for me is I had to take steps before I called him dad. I'll never forget the day, 7th grade, I called him Glenn the whole time. He came home to me and my sister, what does it take, my sister, who's my half-sister, but my sister, they're all my what does it take for you guys to call me dad? From that day on, he's been dad. You know, for the purpose of this class, and if you notice, I make a distinction, my biological father, who shares my name, but is not my dad.
Right.
You know, and so I think that's actually a really, really beautiful thing that you've embraced because that's really the Panther way as well. But it took steps to get there, that's for sure.
Yes, thank you.
That's for sure.
Your question?
Hi, I appreciate both of you coming. I'd like to ask both of you views on charter schools as opposed to public schools or versus community schools, because right now, I used to think that charter schools were something, but what I'm noticing when they bring them in, it makes them shut down a lot of public schools in the area, and then you've got a lot of kids that are left stuck. Do you have an idea of what we could do as a community to try to save our black children? Because the charter schools are not helping. I thought they would, but they're actually not.
Well, what I would say is I think more people need to go to community college. They need to find out about their history and learn good parenting skills. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. What saved me most at the old community school is I actually had parents.
We have so much few of that nowadays.
Yeah, and that's what the problem is. So we need more teachers who are actually in that classroom, not for a paycheck,
Right.
but because they are passionate about educating. And we also need to incorporate in the learning emotional, spiritual, intellectual components to the learning. And I think it starts in the home.
Yeah.
And you know, also a big piece that's missing, I mean, I think I come at things from a law perspective sometimes, and I look at things like the Oakland Police Department. We have cops who are from Utah, who are from Wyoming. You ain't never been to East Oakland. You can't talk to nobody. It's the same thing in our public schools. The teachers are not from the community often, and that's where the disconnect happens. I know that's where the disconnect happened for me once I got out of the Oakland Community School, and that's, you know, I really would like to look at solutions about bringing people in from the community to teach our children, because that's what we had, and that really changed.
Yes, you're absolutely right, both of you. And I wanted to just let you know, whether your final is on Oakland Community School or not, that people came straight out of their teacher credentialing programs. Especially at San Francisco State and San Jose State, their professors told them, if you want to learn to teach, you go intern at the Oakland Community School. They can't pay you beans, but you will learn. And many of the teachers there, like Rodney Gilead, do you remember him? got his start in education, and it shifted his whole awareness. There was nothing like that in his teacher training program. So it was a hands-on environment for people right around the globe. People came from Amsterdam, from India, from all over Europe, and from all over the United States to work on to get their teacher credentialing or their marriage family therapist hours after graduating school. So it was quite a hub of learning, just like you both have said. We can only take one more question for the, if you want to stay, you can stay, but after Alan's question, would you please respect, not leave right this minute, but after Alan's question, you'll have to let people go who have to go. Yes?
So my question is for Mr. Lewis. When I interviewed Ms. Williams for our midterm, we asked her how did the teaching style of the Open Community School affect her form of teaching? And I wonder, how does the teaching style of the OCS affect your profession?
In law?
Yes.
That's a good question. I mean, I think I would go back to when I went to law school. And after I left the school, I had been searching education-wise for that meaning, that educational, like something that stimulated me intellectually and that meant something to me politically. And so it took me through undergrad and all that to connect with law and these principles that impact how we live every day, from contract that we make. We don't realize this, but you're on the playground, you make a contract with somebody. Okay, if you let me ride your bike, I'll give you a stick of gum. You exchange that stick of gum, that's part of the bargain that you just made. And so it's all these things that have impacted our life that I found in law school. And so I think what it did for me was, now in my profession, obviously I like to speak, I like to talk. I prefer to have dialogue with folks. I prefer to listen. Like if I'm meeting with a client, I listen to them more than I want to hear myself. I mean, that's something that we learned at the school. That's something I learned at the school because I was always so vocal that I learned sometimes when you're too vocal, you don't hear what people are saying to you. So you have to learn. I had to learn to kind of reconnect with that. And really just my everyday, my desire to go to law school was to help the community, was to help folks who didn't know their simple basic human rights. After I got to law school and I realized you can't, cop just can't pull you over and say, give me your ID, what are you doing, why are you here? I mean, they can and they do, but pardon me, that shit's illegal. So it was really about empowering from that foundation, but it took me a long time to get there as far as what law school is concerned. So I just think it's part of my everyday. It's a little different. I noticed that when I have taught classes before, I appreciate the student's voice more than my own. And that's the education that we had. And it's just a natural thing.
Can we thank them again, please?